Good evening, everybody. I'm glad you could join us. Perhaps other people will join in as we get started. I wanted to welcome you to, I don't know, is this our 5th or 6th meeting of the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus? And I wanted to introduce you to Donna Personius. She is helping us out in the background. So if you have questions, she's going to field them. If you just type them into the chat and we will answer them either. And I think it's going to be a small group, so we can be pretty casual if we're all on one screen. But otherwise, type your questions into the chat and Donna will make sure we don't miss anything. And with that, I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Lauren Carson.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome to a meeting of the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus. The Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus was an idea of Terry's and mine about a year ago, where we would really build some momentum on Aquidneck Island to engage our constituents from across the island in climate change related matters. We really and truly wanted more participation from the island. We wanted to engage them in our legislative efforts. We wanted to do some educational events, and this is one of them. And of course, COVID did derail us, but we met in person about 4 or 5 times, about 3 times maybe, and we've had 1 or 2 meetings online, and we really want to keep everything going. We really want to maintain some momentum here. Hopefully upon mine and Terry's reelection next year, we will continue to introduce legislation around climate and resiliency related matters. And we're very happy tonight to focus on a topic that we thought would, one of the things Terry and I wanted to do was to really try to build an island-wide understanding of climate. You know, on Aquidneck Island, we tend to be a little bit municipally focused, and we really wanted to build one voice and one experience on climate. And so tonight we thought was a really good idea was to talk about the Municipal Resilience Program, which is a program coming out of the Infrastructure Bank. We have Shaun with us from the Infrastructure Bank, and we're going to hear what the 3 communities on the island are doing around municipal resilience. And so we're hoping that this will really keep our constituents informed and connect you to some of the policy and some of the resiliency efforts that are going on. We have several guests tonight. We have Shaun, and then we have Sarah Atkins from the City of Newport, and then we have Pam Rubinoff from URI Coastal Resource Center, and they're going to talk a little bit about the 3 different communities and how they are participating in the Municipal Resilience Program. So welcome to the new people coming on. I see Rick Grosvenor, I see Ross Kahn came on. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to turn this over to Shaun from the Infrastructure Bank so he can introduce to some folks. Susan Taylor's with us, City Councilor from the City of Newport. And Shaun, if you would just give us a briefing on the Municipal Resilience Program, and then we can see what the 3 communities are doing.
And I'll just briefly add that we are recording this meeting so that we can share it with people who were unable to join us this evening. So take it away, Shaun.
Okay, thank you so much. Is it possible to be able to
We can't quite hear you for some reason, Shaun. At least I couldn't.
Yeah.
Is that better?
A lot better.
Yes.
Okay, great. Are you able to enable the screen sharing so that I can put up a few slides?
Yeah, Donna can do that for us.
Thank you, Donna.
He's still breaking up a lot.
Let me try and call in real quick. 1 second. Sorry about that.
Screen share is now open.
Is that coming through any better?
Yeah, you sound
a lot better.
Okay, great. Apologies for the audio quality. Zoom's pretty quiet, tired, I think, after a long day. First of all, thank you so much to Representative Cortvriend and Representative Carson. Always an honor to join you, and thank you for the invitation. This approach to really developing a comprehensive vision for what climate resilience looks like on Aquidneck Island, I think is absolutely a model that we should be striving towards. And our work on Aquidneck Island around the Municipal Resilience Program really focuses on kind of it really builds on the work that we did through our Resilient Rhody strategy, which was released just about 2 years ago. And over those last 2 years, we've done quite a lot of work on focusing on how do we drive actions in and around Rhode Island, not just in our coastal communities, but also all across the state, from coast to inland, from urban to rural. We've got about 61 actions that we identified inside the strategy, and we've been making tremendous progress on those 61 actions. And one of the things that we learned really quickly with the development of the strategy was that municipalities are on the front lines, and that municipalities own many of the assets that are at risk to a changing climate. And the state can do a lot. We can provide technical assistance, we can provide funding, but it's really the municipalities that need that extra push to be able to work and identify those projects that are most important to them. And that was really the impetus and birth of the Municipal Resilience Program. The Municipal Resilience Program started last year in 2019. And as a result of that program, we had 5 municipalities participate. And in 2020 now, we have another 9 municipalities that are participating. We've already seen the benefit of the participation in this program. We've identified $13 million of brand new funding that has come out of a variety of different bond initiatives, philanthropic funding, and has largely gone towards projects that we've identified through this program. So as I mentioned, the Municipal Resilience Program is a partnership between the Infrastructure Bank and the Nature Conservancy. We're in year 2 right now, and Newport and Middletown are currently participating, and Portsmouth participated last year. So we're proud to say that all of Aquidneck Island is a part of the program. The program is open to all 39 municipalities, and as of right now, 35% of Rhode Island's municipalities are participating. We provide technical assistance through a workshop series called the Community Resilience Building Process, which is administered by the Nature Conservancy. And at the end of the process, what was identified is eligible to apply for action grants to the Infrastructure Bank. And to give a quick overview of kind of what this looks like, in 1 calendar year, we go from putting out an RFP for municipalities to participate. We select those municipalities at the Infrastructure Bank. Municipalities assemble a core team. We schedule the Municipal Resilience Program workshop, the Community Resilience Building Workshop I mentioned a minute ago. We host that workshop, and then we have follow-up engagement with the municipalities to identify particular projects that we want to push forward. We put out an action grant call for proposals, and we fund those action grants up to the tune of at least $1 million a year. And what's been really exciting to see is the range of projects and priorities that have been bubbling up from the local communities. And we started to see quite a lot of overlap from the Aquidneck Island municipalities as we've looked over the last year. As I mentioned, 5 municipalities participated in 2019. We identified about 48 projects totaling $14 million worth of value. And why this is particularly important, and Representative Cortvriend and Carson, you know this very well, is that it is incredibly important to have the data and the pipeline of projects to help you advocate for more of that critical funding to do this work we know is important. And so I always, I use the term pipeline building all the time. I think it's absolutely critical that this program is identifying projects for action grants, but more importantly, building a larger statewide pipeline of projects. In 2019, we funded these projects that are listed here today below for about $1 billion. 2 of the projects came from Portsmouth, so the rehab and stabilization of the Melville Dam, as well as a range of flood mitigation projects. And we're working with Portsmouth right now on implementing those projects. The top municipal concerns, I just highlighted a few here. We looked at around and across Aquidneck Island of the summary of findings reports. And you can see the range of concerns that really came out of those workshops. Many of these are going to be no surprise to you on the line, but has really highlighted some of those key priorities. And that has allowed us then to target actions that are in direct response to the concerns that municipalities are facing. So things like low-lying roads. And the low-lying roads is interesting because in Newport and in Portsmouth, the low-lying roads may be right along the coast and are being impacted from storm surge and sea level rise. And in Middletown, we heard a lot of the concerns around interior flooding from increasing rain events, which we haven't had too many rain events recently. But when we do get good rain, and we are seeing that increasingly across the state, Middletown did identify the water quality as well as flood mitigation concerns around. And again, wastewater treatment facilities continues to be a critical issue and an infrastructure asset of primary focus, given that it is at the bottom of the hill. And we continue to work with municipalities all across the state, including Aquidneck Island, on looking at those upgrades if needed. What are some of the priority actions that we saw come out of the Municipal Resilience Program workshops? Green infrastructure for water quality benefit and also flood mitigation. Coastal restoration projects all across the island came up quite a lot. Backup generators at critical facilities. Vegetation management has also been something that we've seen not only on Aquidneck Island, but statewide. So looking at aging or dead trees that are going to be in conflict with power lines is something that we're hearing about quite a lot. And you can only understand the conflicts that has or the impact on evacuation. So that was the kind of high level overview of the Municipal Resilience Program. What I have been excited about was the kind of proof of concept of this program. The Infrastructure Bank put up the capital for action grants over the first 2 years. And we are advocating heavily right now, looking at the green bond, which is proposed for 2020. We obviously it's not going to be on the ballot for this November, but we do hope that we can get that passed because $7 million is allocated on that green bond for this program moving forward. And that will allow us to scale this to all 39 cities and towns over the next 2.5 to 3 years. So we continue our advocacy, and thank you to everyone on this call for continuing to promote and push for that funding. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Pam Rubinoff, who's going to talk about the Portsmouth, and then we'll go to Sarah Atkins for Newport, and I'll come back again to talk about Middletown. So Pam?
Before you do that, Shaun, before they explain what exactly happened in each of the municipalities, sure. When you did that graph showing how the workflow went, who was involved in the workshops when you put them together on the ground in each community, so people can know who these ideas came from? Great question, thank you.
So it is very much I would say a municipally focused, municipal leadership focused workshop. So department leads from each of the municipalities, departments. We have representatives from a lot of the organizations that work with that town very closely. So that's another group. We've had representatives from health equity zones, which are also inside of the towns which we're working with. So I would say they're leaders who are representing constituents and residents or municipal leaders within town or city hall.
Thank you. That's very useful. Pam?
Great. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure actually to participate in these MRP efforts, and I did all of them on the island. And I would just like to say of the first parts here that I want to say about Portsmouth. First of all, I do not represent the town of Portsmouth, but I work at the University of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Center. And we have been engaged with the town of Portsmouth for a couple of years because of their interest in wanting to reach out to their communities and wanting to be more resilient. And so before this program came into the municipalities, in coordination with Shaun and his team, we decided to actually do the MRP process in a neighborhood, Common Fence Point, one of the more vulnerable neighborhoods on the island, as kind of a pilot effort to really do it at the neighborhood level. So that's where our experience started. The municipality really got motivated by that and also then applied for the MRP, which is very exciting. The timing was really good because they were working on their comprehensive plan and their hazard mitigation plan. And so the information could then be used for the MRP. They had, going to your point, Representative Carson, they had a good cross-section of municipal and community leaders. And this was the one that was in person because it was pre-COVID. So they had around 60 people in town hall, 3 or 4 different facilitators, and really working hard to try to get things going. But I have to say, the process at the community level and then at the municipal level was very similar. And then really representing that at the through Zoom on the other ones, I think they did a great job. Key findings from this, to build on Shaun's words, here for Portsmouth, they talked a lot about capacity building. They really thought that hiring a resilience coordinator was important and a town engineer. And the town engineer was because a lot of drainage issues, septic system issues, work on the roads, and they really felt that they needed a full-time engineer. Issues with with coordinating capacity building with organizations, businesses, and town committees, from preparation in terms of working with the Red Cross and getting business continuity plans in place to working with town committees on how they could be more integrating resilience. Some of the higher priority projects, as Shaun pointed out, 3 of which have been funded, is stormwater flooding. One of them came from our Common Fence Point effort, where their one entrance to the community was really at risk. And so they actually got funding through the MRP process to help to mitigate that. Green infrastructure was a big part about issues with regards to road drainage. The Melville Dam, completing some of the remediation there. Emergency shelters, not only for people, but for pets, really important in Portsmouth. And then outreach to vulnerable neighborhoods. There was a lot of conversation about the whole island coordination, from operations center for the 3 communities, evacuation plan coordination, and coordination on signage and procedures. And so they very much recognize that they're an island and they're part of the island and that the island needs to work together. So that's what I have to share from them.
That's great, Pam. That's great. Sarah, I think you're up.
Oh, just to show, we did have a couple of pictures here. The one on the top left is from the town of Portsmouth workshop. So this is really how it goes in most of these communities when, you know, we might be in a very big room with lots of tables, but in this instance, we had different rooms. But all the same, you could see it's very similar down on the bottom. That's the neighborhood scale. So everybody's looking at maps and talking, and there's a facilitator. And then to the right, you see some things with red dots, yellow dots, and green dots. And so those are 3 different groupings. Let it be, once again, at the community level or at the town level, and everybody comes up with their top priorities. And you start to see that the different groups start to think about the same things. And that there's you could start to then see what the high priorities of the community are. And again, this effort, it was taken to Zoom, but it was very much similar, mirrored the effort at the neighborhood level and the in-person town level. Thank you.
I'll just jump in and say, Pam, I had the pleasure of being, I think, in your group in both Portsmouth and Middletown. So live in person and on Zoom. And you condensed it. And so in a way, we got right down to business probably a little quicker on Zoom. And it was really interesting to see that when the groups come back, how similar people are thinking about things.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to see them across towns as well and see the similarities across the municipalities.
Thank you, Pam. Sarah?
So yeah, this was a high priority for Newport right from the beginning after the announcement was made about this opportunity. And so I ended up making a call to Shaun with John Shea of the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission to coordinate sort of how to approach the whole application process between the three municipalities. And between the three of us, Shaun recommended that we allow Portsmouth to go ahead with their application, and that Newport and Middletown would apply the next year. So that's exactly what we did. And we of course, with our approach was to go ahead and do the same thing that we'd seen in Portsmouth. In fact, I'd attended that Portsmouth workshop myself. And so we were expecting possibly having 60 people between the two municipalities, and that we would go through the process together and see what kind of benefits we would get from going through the process together. And with COVID, that changed everything. And so in the end, we, like Middletown, ended up with a smaller number of stakeholders at the workshop. But I think, as Terri said, you get right down to business, and it was a different way of working through the process. The one in Portsmouth was many hours. It was probably 5 or 6 hours, and the workshop on Zoom was, I think, 3 hours. And we did ours at the end of August, and basically had stakeholders, a number of city staff from relevant departments like public services and utilities, our fire chief, etc., planning department, excuse me. And then also state representatives who represent Newport, people from relevant boards and commissions, Tree and Open Space, Energy Environment. Evan Ridley attended for us, and he's here tonight. The Zoning Board, Planning Board, etc. And then we also had local nonprofits, sort of relevant nonprofits as well. We invited the Health Equity Zone, Clean Ocean Access, the Restoration Foundation, Aquidneck Community Table, the Housing Authority, and the Fifth Ward Neighborhood Association with Elizabeth Fuerte, and she also represented the Health Equity Zone. We also had people from the business community, like the Chamber of Commerce. We had Woodard and Curran, the engineering firm, represented, and Arnold Robinson from the Regional Planning Office of Fuss and O'Neill, also because of his a lot of his experience of working in Newport. So we found our conversation dealt primarily with the major concerns people have around stormwater management, managing the influx of sea level rise and climate change impacts and storms, more frequent storms, and a lot of conversation around just how our infrastructure would manage it. And right now we're in the process that Shaun described of studying the findings closely and then discussing them with the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and moving forward. At this point, I can't really go into more detail on the report. We just got the final version in the last week or so, and the city council really needs to see it before I go into much more detail about sort of what the city wants to focus on.
That's great. That's great, Sarah. Thank you very much. I actually participated in the Newport workshops, and you know, it was a way to really percolate those ideas up so that we can really begin to focus more time and money actually on those vulnerabilities that we see. So I'm going to ask a question of Shaun. So Shaun, all three communities said that they want capacity building between the communities on the island. And I know that the program has been geared municipality by municipality, but let's say over the short-term future, how can we begin to build toward an island mentality? And what kind of resources will there be available, or would you envision becoming available to really build an island-wide response so that we could work closer together? What do you think about that question?
I think it's exactly where we want to go. We recognize that there's no way we're going to be able to look at 39 different approaches in Rhode Island to solve this problem. There's a lot of regionality that makes a lot of sense. The East Bay, Aquidneck Island, that we're starting to see some of these shared resources as well as shared concerns and shared opportunities emerge. I think one of the key first steps is going to be finding kind of the owner and leader on Aquidneck Island to push this forward. And we have found that if there's a champion, there's always a will to move things forward. And so, I would love to be able to work, with this group here on seeing how we take all three of the findings, how we continue to build on the great leadership that is emerging in all three towns, and see how we can increase the technical assistance and actually work for more funding in the future. Just, one little story, in Westerly, for example, which participated in 2019, just since they completed their workshop and got their action grants, they've identified $3 million of additional funding for projects. Just because we've continued to work together, we've looked for creative ways to be proactive in identifying, projects that everyone said was going to be important to move forward. So now they've secured NOAA funding. They've secured funding from the 2018 bond, the Wastewater Treatment Facility Resilience Fund, as well as the Climate Resilience Fund. And so a variety of different other sources now start to emerge, and I could see that happening on Aquidneck Island as well. But I would love to see if we could figure out who owns that collaboration on the island so that we can kind of have a point of access.
Well, Terri and I are open to that discussion anytime. I'm sure I can speak liberally for both of us on that topic.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the greatest things about this project is that it's not just identifying these major priorities that the municipalities, want to pursue, but to be able to work directly with Infrastructure Bank immediately after these things have been identified in order to look at funding. And that just is where the rubber meets the road. It makes a big difference to be able to work with the Infrastructure Bank around this and get their guidance. And I wanted to say too, around the issue of working together island-wide, one of the things that Middletown and Newport will be doing relatively soon is we'll be getting together to compare and contrast our reports.
Great.
And identify some things that we can look at jointly.
That sounds great.
I have a question.
Before you do that, I was going to say, if anyone has questions, put them in the chat box or we'll identify you. So however you want to do it is fine. But go ahead, Terri.
Can we take the screen down? So are we done sharing screen so we can see each other? There we go.
Great idea. Great idea.
I was going to ask, some of the projects that I noticed that came out of the Middletown, which was I did more recently, that weren't really infrastructure projects, but were more like concepts, like we talked about the stormwater utility. And how can the state through the Infrastructure Bank help move those conversations along that maybe don't have like a project per se attached to them?
I would say it can be a connector. Start being a connector to other groups around the state that are doing great work. We focus at the Infrastructure Bank on funding and financing those capital improvement projects. But I would very much love to be able to start to make those connections to other groups around the state. And I think that the perfect example representative was on the stormwater utility work, which came out. That's not something the Infrastructure Bank is going to lead, but that's something that we could find the right people to put together.
Okay, thank you.
We did find in 2017, the university coordinated with the 3 municipalities and the AIPC and looked at a real cursory view of what the island issues were. And we had some focus groups and such. And again, it was a very cursory thing, but we very much found out that there were some key issues across the island. And it came down to transportation, residential flooding, emergency preparedness, island economies. And those were kind of the issues that boiled the top. And we found that we spoke a lot of the different mechanisms that might be able to coordinate across the island within those themes. And so a lot of it think is, might not be a specific infrastructure project, coordination and the linkages across the municipalities was something that came out. So I can that again to you, that resilience strategy, but to more of the local level, which is wonderful. But occasionally you have to back up.
Liz, Liz, did you want to?
Thank you. Yeah, I know some of you, but not all. I'm Elizabeth Scott, and I previously worked at the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management for over 30 years in the Office of Water Resources, but I'm currently involved with the Southeast New England Program Network, and we are an EPA-funded initiative of 15 organizations. It's NGOs, academic institutions, and some regional planning groups across Rhode Island and all of Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. That's the Southeast New England program area. And our mission is to provide technical assistance and training to municipalities, organizations, and tribes to advance stormwater management and watershed management, climate resiliency, and financing to support that work. And so we did a call for participants. We just were formed. We've just completed our first year. We got funded in October of 2019, and the project is administered by the University of Southern Maine's New England Environmental Finance Center. And they've signed a 5-year cooperative agreement with EPA. So we, as I said, we've just completed year 1. We are embarking on year 2 of the effort, and hopefully we'll have funding to continue through for a total of 5 years. So last spring, just as we were all getting locked down in the COVID world, we issued a call for participants to basically offer technical assistance to, advance these different initiatives that I spoke of. And of the 12 awards, technical assistance awards that we announced, one is to the town of Portsmouth, to basically assist them with developing a town-wide climate resilience plan and financing strategy. So the idea is basically to pick up where the MRP left off and to do a little bit more narrowing down of priorities and actually begin to get some preliminary kind of ballpark cost estimates for some of the higher priority projects, so that they and assist them with building that into their capital infrastructure program, and look at various financing options. So that's something that we will be starting with the town of Portsmouth in January. They wanted to get through not only the elections, but also the update of their comprehensive plan, or closer to finishing that anyways. And so there's definitely interest on the part of the network partners to be facilitating regional efforts, certainly island-wide climate resiliency planning and so forth. So it's probably too late to be able to incorporate it now with, we've got this project that we'll be doing with Portsmouth, but maybe that lays out a path forward that we then in a future year could include the other island communities. I don't know, I think it's worth a conversation to see if there is a way to be able to look at an island-wide approach. I know there's definitely interest on the part of network partners. It's just, we've given this award to Portsmouth, so we can't really take it away,
Right.
Yeah,
I would encourage island-wide planning and resiliency. We only have 3 ways to get off the island, and we're all going to be jammed on those bridges if we need to get off. So we all kind of need to figure out how to work together. You know, as I have said, and you've all heard, you know, the sea rise doesn't know where the Middletown Newport line is. It's just coming up on the east and the west side of the island. So, you know, clearly, the more we can work together, that's really what Terri and I would hope that we could achieve through these conversations, was raising that awareness.
Yeah, and I, you know, just the one point I want to make, I mean, you all are doing amazing work, and certainly the SNAP network isn't in any way intending to come in and just say, okay, we're in the new kids on the block now, we're it, you know. We really are looking to just leverage and you know, fill in gaps and to, you know, provide, you know, support where we can, and obviously to work with all of the existing players and build, you know, strong partnerships. So just to be clear, that's, you know, that's where we're coming from.
yeah, and
Thank
I
you.
would say too,
Thank
just
you.
on behalf of Newport, that, you know, we saw that call for participants, and it makes a lot of sense that you'd be working with Portsmouth now, and for us, it's a matter of timing. So it all works out, I think, very nicely, because I think that kind of participation on our part, on Middletown's part, after we've got the MRP process behind us, we'll be in a better position to work with SNAP, because I think, yeah, a key part of this is about the financing and how you pay for these things.
Exactly right.
Mhm.
Exactly right.
Ross Can has a question.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead, Ross. Where's Ross? Do we want to ask his question?
I'm
This
sorry, I
question-
did not mean, I must have accidentally pushed something.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that's okay.
No problem.
I was
No
trying
problem.
to get the AIPC and Aquidneck Land Trust into the equation with regard to being that champion that you were talking about. So I'll take myself off.
They were involved in the municipal resilience programs for sure, right, Shaun? You would know best.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were. They were one of those community organizations that they mentioned participate in those workshops.
But it would be good to elevate them perhaps as
Yes.
we move forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
As I said, John Shea was in the original call with me to Shaun O'Rourke when we strategized about how to do the Aquidneck Island approach on the applications for the MRP.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One other, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So one other follow-up thought to build on the great comments, especially from Elizabeth, was that this program is very much a springboard to follow-on action. And I think what we're hearing tonight is exactly that, different groups latching on to particular topics that emerged to really carry that forward towards implementation. And you know, we really wanted to build a program that was not a matter of just identifying problems or solutions, but really how do we then build a bridged implementation? And I think that that's what we're really trying to focus on. You know, one other piece that is critical about this program is that we not only have other groups telling municipalities what they should do, it's this work is emanating from the municipality itself, which then has that inherent buy-in all the way from the town council to the elected leaders, to be able to then be the champions for calling for additional groups to come in and help them implement that vision. And so we think that that's been a really helpful portion of and part of this program.
Thank you, Shaun.
Thank
Are there any questions? Anyone have any questions? Either raise your hand and let Donna see you, or put them in the chat box.
Anyone?
Doesn't have any questions.
Oh.
You want to make some remarks, Terri?
Sure. Well, I thank you guys all for joining us tonight, and I think it would be good. I'm thinking off the top of my head that perhaps after Newport and Middletown go through their MRP process and maybe do some work with Elizabeth, so we're all on the same playing field with the same information, perhaps perhaps the AIPC or some other ad hoc group could get a roundtable discussion of the municipalities together for like a phase 2, if you will, a more island-wide approach. I don't know what anybody thinks about that. But
We have 2 questions. There's one from Susan and then another from Dave Brown, who came in before Susan.
Okay. Yeah, we can, either one of you. David, you want to ask your question first? Unmute. Can you unmute David, Donna?
I can't.
No?
It's not
Yep.
letting me.
There you are, David.
There he is.
Okay.
Yeah, golly, and had nobody ever wanted to hear me before. Who's in control of mute? Give her a signal here. I'm thinking of a triangle, like 3 things. One has to do with the natural resources, which this is focusing on. There's the second part of the future of Aquidneck Island, which is economic opportunities, thinking particularly of local smallish enterprises and not being overrun by big corporations and all that. And the third has to do with equity and minority groups, affordable housing. And so this question I put on focuses on this, that in amid the concern with common points, Fitz Point and the Nova area and so on, a lot of this, and on the eastern side, and things like the land trust doing and so on, tend to make nice surroundings for relatively affluent people who would like to be isolated from housing nearby and traffic and stuff, right? But if we want, have you thought about to what extent do you want to have lower income groups on the island, service workers, medical care people, and younger people, next generations, be able to have startups here on the island, which means maybe having some trailer courts pushed farther inland than they now are, things like this, and having a mix of that. So that's one question, okay? Then this has to do with the second question is infrastructure bank. We on the Navy RAB, we deal with communities along Burma Road, like Overlook Point area and Melville. And so they tend to look at things from the bottom up, so to speak, from their fence outward. And so when they hear about the infrastructure bank having a meeting to which not everybody in the neighborhood is invited, and all of a sudden they're talking about some sort of water system going down from Melville to serve along there, they start to get suspicious that maybe there's a corporation, a bad corporation lurking in the background. And first step is to get as much as possible the water, all the taxpayers of Portsmouth to pay for that water down there, which they would use, right? And maybe they're talking and they're getting a loan maybe from you guys in RIB to help start up, and they may have eyes on tank farm second, 2 or 1 or whatever parts of it. So that's what's going on, and it goes on in the mind at these local levels, maybe, huh? And if you look at the infrastructure bank website, it tends to be kind of looking from, and this is true of a lot of organizations, it tends to look from the inside out, who we are sitting in Providence, your faces showing up and all that, but not looking at it through the eyes of local neighborhoods and what kind of configuration, how would this all fit, and not really reassuring that there's no bad guy. So how would you respond to these kinds of questions that are already points?
I'll just say that participating in the community, the workshop, that was a whole host of people from all over the community and was put on in an open way. And so I'll let Shaun add on, but you know, there's always a conspiracy theorist in every crowd, but I don't really, I think there might be confusion between different meetings, Mr. Brown, that you might be talking about. But
And
the,
I also think that you and I, Terry and I, are working to really bring all this to as many people as possible. You know,
yes,
so Terry and I are doing our best to stay on top of all these developments because we truly think that they're very important to work on. So,
be
you know,
a
rely on us. Rely
Yeah,
on
no,
us
that's
to
good.
get to
I've
the
taken
bottom
part
of
in it
things.
too. I've taken
Thank
part
you,
of it
Lauren.
too. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
Call
you.
us. Rely on us. If you hear anyone hears anything, what's going on? What can be done? I mean, that's our jobs to get to the bottom of
No,
those questions.
we're working
Yes.
on through the RAB trying to have more of a cooperative approach, not just big long letters in the paper and complaining, but in more a constructive approach. We're making progress on that side of it. And so if there is attention to some of this kind of thing, it has to do with kind of, my background was with the Extension Service in different states and with the Soil Conservation Service. There's a way that a county agent has of kind of going out and saying, well, what we're doing here is this, and kind of explaining in a non-bureaucratic way. I don't think the infrastructure bank, most banks don't have that savvy.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes in government, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing sometime, and that's when you need folks like us to get in there and get to the bottom of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is helping. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's two questions. Yeah.
yeah, somebody else had a question.
Equity question I had also.
Well, we'll come back to you, Dave, but let's
Okay,
go over
sorry.
to
Yeah.
some of the other questions.
Susan had a question, and then Ross had another question.
Thank you very much, Terry and Lauren, for putting this evening together. And we had spoken to you, Terry, before about making a short presentation about the Climate Action Rhode Island group. And I see that Victoria's here. I hate to put her on the spot, but Victoria, are you prepared to say a few words about that tonight since we have the time?
Yeah, I guess I can. I didn't prepare anything, but I can just kind of give a little overview. So I'm part of a group with Susan as well, part of Climate Action Rhode Island. We are a subsidiary of 350.org, and we're a group of individuals who are trying to work to further climate causes, and specifically legislators who support climate causes in the state. There's 8 different subgroups. Both Susan and I are part of the Newport subgroup. And after the election, thus far what we've been doing is essentially trying to help, we've been trying to help legislators get elected by, trying to bring out the vote, and our members have been active in canvassing and phone banking. And after the election, we're hoping to continue to be really active and just educating both the public as well as legislators in terms of what specific climate, what the climate agenda should look like.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did talk to Jeff this afternoon, and we're going to have after the election, we'll have another meeting. And I told Jeff that we would put you on the agenda and you could speak more, be more prepared in.
So sorry to do that to you, Victoria, but we are looking for other members, and we, especially on the island. So we thought, since there's a few folks here interested, it might be good to just to say the word tonight, and we can say it again in another, few weeks. So thanks for that time. I appreciate it. And thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. And who was
Ross.
next?
Ross Kahn.
Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for organizing this. 2 quick questions. I'm here representing the Newport Architectural Forum, which is a group that's interested in planning, zoning, and architecture. How will these recommendations find their way into zoning and building codes?
Good question.
Which is very key, and that's kind of been a third rail in general. It's probably not a question that's going to be able to be answered immediately, but I would like the organizers and the legislators to think about that in the back of their minds, because obviously that's where the rubber hits the road. And on behalf of our membership that wasn't able to be here tonight, when and where will I be able to find a recording of this so that I can share it with them and people can kind of get up to speed on their own schedule?
I'll make sure I get that to you, Ross.
Thank you so much.
You're
Yes, you
welcome.
know what? I put, we do have an Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus mailing list, and it's been very ad hoc, and we've been putting on these meetings over every couple of months to just sort of bring information to folks. So people should contact me if they want to be on the mailing list, and you can find me, Lauren Carson, online. My email is laurenhcarson@gmail, and I can add you to the mailing list. We don't do a lot of emails because I do them myself, so I don't do a lot of emails. Like, we really just send out emails when we're announcing the meetings. That's really what we do. Or we might do a follow-up and send out the recording. So that's how we've been using the mailing list. So, and we'll put it on our Facebook pages. You know, we do put it all over the place. So Ross, I can add you to the mailing list. I don't think you're on it. I'll add you myself, and then you'll get links to future stuff that way.
Okay, thanks. And once it's up, whether it's on the Facebook page or wherever, I'll send links out to our 300 members just so that they can.
That'd be great. I'll
up.
make sure you get on that list. And again, if anybody wants to be on the list, just let Terri or I know. And I don't think we'll have another meeting. We may have another meeting before the end of the year. We don't know. You know, we were trying to meet like once every 6 or 8 weeks, but then COVID got in the way and then it stretched it out. So we may do another one before year's end. We don't know. We'll see how the election goes and how COVID goes and sort of all those other fun things that are affecting our daily lives. So.
Hey, Lauren, can you hear me by any chance?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, I got one point and one quick question for you. I've been working in Panama City, Florida. We got hit by a pretty big hurricane about 2 years ago, Hurricane Michael. And since then, we've had about $1 billion flowing into Bay County from 3 big federal grant programs. And what was interesting is I have found that the county did not know how to best rebuild. They knew they could rebuild. They just didn't have a great overall vision for that. They could put things back to how they were, but it was surprising to me that there wasn't more of a plan or a vision for Bay County.
Wow.
So I think that might be it's just like a different perspective, and it was a huge hurricane, which is really unusual. But so if you get really hit by a big storm, there's a huge amount of funding that comes into an area. So it might be good just to have I'm sure you guys have a big vision. I actually, my girlfriend's in Newport right now. So I'm sure you guys have a big vision for what to do in case of a storm of that size, but these guys didn't. And my question is, did you guys use any sort of benefit cost analyses for picking the MRP projects that you guys are working with?
Shaun?
So I'm going to actually just follow up on one point that Ross made, and then I'll go to the current question. Ross, thank you for the question about planning, zoning, building standards. We are looking for commonalities of concerns across municipalities, and one of the things that we've heard is exactly that, which really gives us the added push to be advocating at all levels of state and municipal government for best practices. So operationalizing those recommendations is key. So that's very much kind of the forefront of where we're trying to go. So thank you for that point. And then to the point of the vision, a little story. One thing that I hear all the time in talking with elected officials, town managers, town administrators, is, I say, well, how can we assist you in your work? And they say, well, we need more money. And the follow-up question then is like, okay, well, where do you want to prioritize that money if we were able to find it for you? And I often hear, let me get back to you. And that raised a lot of red flags, and frankly was the impetus for this program, was to help develop a prioritized list of actions that we could then flip and be more proactive in addressing. The larger vision, I think, is something that we could think about as far as a larger Aquidneck Island. And we have some of, right now, the components to be able to start think about where prioritization of funding should go. We need to not only be thinking about where funding should go when it arrives, but thinking about how do we deploy that funding before the storm hits. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I think this is a terrific conversation tonight. And hopefully the impetus of a larger Aquidneck Island vision study that allows us to get ahead of some of that funding that could come through?
4 years ago, when I was first elected, I chaired a House Study Commission on the economic impact of climate change on Rhode Island. And that study commission studied three specific areas of the state, not municipalities. We studied Westerly, we studied the Providence Harbor and waterfront, and we studied Newport. And when we studied, and that report is online, so all you have to do is Google Carson and House Study Commission on the Economic Impact of Climate. You'll find it was a very, very extensive report that we did, like about 50 pages. But the point I want to make is about how we learned how Westerly revived itself after it was hit by Sandy. And there's a lot of information in there about what the businesses did. We had some businesses come in and tell us how they revived themselves. And I think you're raising a good point about having some kind of a blueprint for other municipalities to use. I don't think that kind of a blueprint actually exists, but there were some very interesting lessons to learn about sort of reviving a community after it's been hit by a hurricane severely. And I think that you might want to look at that and see how, and maybe we could talk about some kind of a blueprint going forward where there's some guidelines, because the kinds of things that happened in Westerly was that businesses had to find bridge loans because their FEMA money did not kick in right away. There were actually a lot of carpetbaggers that came in and tried to sell services to the businesses that were flat out, and they were trying to get involved in some of that grant writing that they were doing with FEMA. They were sort of a little underhanded, to tell you the truth. There was like a year where they were out of business, and a lot of the businesses had to lay people off, so there was economic impact to the community. I think there were 29 businesses that were affected on the Westerly waterfront on the beach in Misquamicut, and I think 28 of them came back. One did not, so that's a good sign. And there were some lessons that they learned. One of them, several of them rented space away from the beach. That way, if there was a future hurricane, they could relocate their physical assets, the restaurants, tables and chairs, stores, their inventory. So there were some lessons in there that I'm glad you're raising this. They weren't really externalized to the rest of the state, but that's the best example we have in Rhode Island about how to revive a community after it's hit by a hurricane. I suggest you go look at that report.
Thank you,
And I
Lauren.
know that, for instance, in Portsmouth, they actually did write as one of their priorities, one of their higher priorities is to develop a post-disaster recovery plan. So I think that you're correct about, kind of putting together some of the nuts and bolts together with the vision. And what are the things that you would do as an island if you had an influx of new money and you had a blank slate in many instances? So really
Yes.
good point.
I think Elizabeth has been raising her
Yeah,
hand.
I think that may be our last question too. It's just about 7. I don't know if there's
Okay.
anything else.
Yeah, so you all might be very familiar with the Rhode Island EMA, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency's funding opportunities, but I think it was last week that they announced the BRIC grants. And I will just share my screen real quickly. Oh shoot, yeah. So it is, this is the fact sheet that they just came out with. And I'm bringing it to your attention because I think there's a lot of money. So the application opened September 30th and the application deadline is January 29th. So there's a good amount of time for maybe trying to work on putting together an island-wide grant proposal. And the kinds of projects that they'll fund include capability and capacity building activities, as well as mitigation projects and management costs. So it's potentially a huge amount of funding to support the next steps that you've all been talking about. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I provided the link in the chat box and sent that to friends of Terri Cortvriend.
Okay, great.
And maybe that can just be put out to the group via email. But I think it's a huge opportunity that folks might be interested in looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Actually, just
That's
one,
great.
if I may, just one follow-up on that. So there's quite a bit of nuance. Thank you for flagging that, Elizabeth. The Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency administers the grants for the state. So if you look at it, they are the applicant. The notice of intent actually for sub-applicants, which would be a municipality organization, has actually closed. And so they vet applications that come in statewide, and then they put kind of the best projects forward. And so Kim Korioff, who's actually on the line, and I actually worked with the 2019 municipalities to participate in the Municipal Resilience Program to put forward projects that they identified for that funding. But I will say that this is hopefully going to be happening every year. And so we have a little bit of time now that we have all 3 municipalities on Aquidneck Island participating and collaborating. I could see next year applying for a terrific proposal to BRIC, in the 2021 funding round. I think it would be a terrific funding source.
We saw.
That's great. That's great.
It's great.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I just wanted to say that we saw that opportunity, and again, it's around the timing and just getting the MRP sort of behind us and putting us in a better position to make applications like that. I also wanted to be sure to mention too, as we're talking about working island-wide, and I know it's 703, but just to mention also that Port was recently awarded a grant from the Department of Defense to work with the Navy in
Yes.
installation resilience.
Excellent.
Yes, I heard about that.
Are going to be doing actually similar workshops. We're using the MRP as a model. We're doing similar workshops, I think basically geographically oriented, and we'll be reassessing the memorandum of understanding between the 3 municipalities and the Navy, and just looking also at vulnerabilities there using URI software to identify vulnerable places. So I just want you all to know that that's another element that's coming into play as we work together on the island.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Sarah. Well, this
Thank
has been
you.
a great meeting, I think.
Yeah.
It was really great having all of you. The presenters did a great job. I mean, we thought it was really important for folks to know what our municipalities are doing, and clearly there's a lot in the pipeline, so to speak. Thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and if you want to be on our mailing list, let Terri or I know, and watch for future meetings, and we'll take it from there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Have a-
Appreciate you all
so
for
much.
joining us.
Yes, thank you all.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.